delays of probate court and how a simple will and trust could help you and your family. For 25 years, we have made estate plans, elder and family law, and mediation easy to understand. We'll help your family avoid court altogether. That's just one area that we can help you with. Feel secure in protecting your family's legal needs.
Protect your family from the delays of probate and other family law issues. Call for a free consultation at 651-222-4400. That's 651-222-4400. Michelle MacDonald and her clients founded the Family Innocence Project. Discover their mission by visiting familyinnocence.org.
You can also visit relevantradio.com, keyword law. Welcome back to the Family Innocence Project radio program on Relevant Radio. I'm attorney Michelle MacDonald, and our guests include Benedictus Ombuna, who inspired me to the Family Innocence Project, Kimberly Hanlon, attorney and qualified mediator who believes there is a better way, and that better way is the Family Innocence Project, and Anita Motolinia, qualified mediator. We're talking with Benedictus, and we'll get to our other guests in a moment. But again, what I want to say is that I again thought that we were going to have a telephone conference. So 10 minutes of my time, get on the phone with the judge and tell them this was a mistake. And do you remember sitting with me in that office a couple of weeks later? So at this point, you hadn't seen your son in a couple weeks because the order that we explained didn't say that you had parenting time, so you weren't getting any. And you didn't even know where your son was at this point. You knew he was with a great aunt. You didn't know where she lived. Nothing, right?
The only interesting thing was I had been given a court order saying that I had 100% custody of my son. And then when this ex parte order came by, it was a big confusion because the same judge who gave me 100% legal custody and physical is the same judge who signed the ex parte order splitting my custody again in half. And at that point I was very confused. I don't know where my son is. And the same aunt who had my son had tried to get custody of my ex-wife's 2 other children, but she had been denied because she was told she had no legal rights. But how again it turned around that now she had legal right over my son, I don't understand. And that's when I came to you so confused, and I needed answers.
And what we determined was that they did have no legal rights. The courts had no legal rights over your son. And I'm going to speed this up a little bit so that we can get to our other guests. But in that telephone conference, I remember the judge saying, and I just thought it was going to be a piece of cake, another 15 minutes of my time, the judge saying, you want your speedy trial, Benedictus Ombuna and Michelle MacDonald? I'm going to give you a speedy trial. And again, we're not talking about child protection. This is family court. And the speedy trial was about 4 months later.
That was the amazing thing. I didn't understand what speedy meant because I thought it would have been in a week or two, but it ended up coming up in 4 months.
Okay, and at that speedy trial, and I'm gonna, we had a trial. I again argued there was no jurisdiction, that you were never served, that there was no subject matter jurisdiction, no personal jurisdiction, and that means the court had no authority to do anything in your case. And ultimately, I think after $50,000 in billed fees, and I have the exact number, it was over $50,000, between $50,000 and $51,000, the court vacated the order, removed itself from the case, meaning the judge said oopsie. I keep saying the judge said oopsie, removed himself, vacated all the orders, and dismissed the case, and you were back again into family innocence. Do you remember that day?
I do remember very well, and I still was confused because you kept telling the judge he had no jurisdiction over the matter, but they pushed on and made sure that I incurred a lot of fees that I don't know if I'll ever pay. And eventually when he removes himself, they don't want to take responsibility for the damage already done to the families. And that was the motivation of Family Innocence Project.
And what happened to Benedictus is, and this is really important to me, is that at some point I had heard that Pope John Paul II was going to be beatified. And I heard it on relevant radio, and I heard that there was a call for miracles, that it was kind of like anybody could ask for a miracle. And I woke up one night and I decided to pray for my miracle. And first I thought, my family's doing pretty well. My business is doing very, very well. I thought my health is well, my family's health is well. I thought maybe $1 million would be nice, but I thought that was too selfish. And your case came to mind. And I heard like a whisper, abolish family court in 1 year. And I put it aside because it's something that I didn't want to do, because for me that would be career suicide. And within a couple of days of that moment in the middle of the night, I was in court with you. And do you remember that?
I do remember that vividly, because you asked me, have you ever heard of Pope John Paul? Something to that effect, and I told you, yes, I have heard of Pope John Paul, and I'm a Catholic. And actually, I was confirmed by that same Pope John Paul.
And that was in Kenya, Africa?
That was in Kenya, in a monastery which was called Lumbwa by then. That was a colonial name given to the region, which has since been changed to an indigenous name called Kipkelion.
And he was an archbishop at the time?
I think he was an archbishop visiting Africa at that point. And I was very much involved in the church. My family was, and we were ready for confirmation, and that's how I got my name Benedictus, because by that time I was known as Peter, my baptism name. And we were so excited. We were told, oh, there's a visiting bishop, and he's at the monastery, and you guys are going to go there, and there's going to be a big mass, and all of you are going to be confirmed. And I was in the group.
And you told me that your mother was going to be a nun. Your father was going to be a priest. Instead, they met, married, had, and I keep saying 19 children, but had 18 children, and 9 of the boys were confirmed by Pope John Paul II that day when he was a bishop in Kenya, Africa, archbishop, whatever.
Yes, Michelle, I've always denied the 19, but you know what? You have always been correct, because the first one had died, and the living ones were 18, so 19 is the correct answer. My parents were told, go to the world and multiply, and they did it so well, so they had 19. And correct, yes, we were all 9 of us confirmed by Pope John Paul.
And that day, I went into court, and I told the judge on the record or you testified on the record to being that whole story, and the judge objected. The attorney didn't object. Just as you were about to say who you were confirmed by, the judge objected, and you were speaking slowly. I was trying to get the words out, and you finally did say it, and I had to explain to the court why I wanted that evidence in. Because first of all, when you're talking about a custody case, religion is an issue. In fact, legal custody is education, religious upbringing, and schooling. So it was relevant. And I said something like, because I prayed for a miracle in family court, that's why it's relevant. Something like that. And
yes, you did say that. And if the court system did not believe in religion, then explain to me why, when you are being sworn in court, you have to take the Bible and swear with the Bible. So the court do believe in religion.
And on that note, within a couple of weeks, we had our first meeting of the Family Innocence Project. This is the Family Innocence Project radio program on Relevant Radio. The Family Innocence Project is a nonprofit organization dedicated to keeping families out of court, resolving conflicts and injustices peacefully. When we return, we'll talk to Kimberly Hanlon, attorney and qualified mediator, founding member, advisory board member of the Family Innocence Project, and Anita Motolinia, mediator and advisory board member of the Family Innocence Project. We'll be right back. For months, you've heard how important it is to avoid probate court with the right will and trust. Hi, I'm attorney Michelle MacDonald, and you should be concerned. I want the best for my clients, but frankly, many don't understand the perils and delays of probate court and how a simple will and trust could help you and your family. For 25 years, we have made estate plans, elder and family law, and mediation easy to understand. We'll help your family avoid court altogether. That's just one area that we can help you with. Feel secure in protecting your family's legal needs.
Protect your family from the delays of probate and other family law issues. Call for a free consultation at 651-222-4400. That's 651-222-4400. Michelle MacDonald and her clients founded the Family Innocence Project. Discover their mission by visiting familyinnocence.org.
You can also visit relevantradio.com, keyword law. Welcome back to the Family Innocence Project radio program. I'm attorney Michelle MacDonald, and our guests include Benedictus Ombuna, who inspired me to the Family Innocence Project after a wrongful custody order shook him up and shook me up, and is now shaking up the whole family court world. Kimberly Hanlon, attorney and qualified mediator, founding member of the Family Innocence Project, who believes there is a better way, and Anita Motolinia, mediator and advisory board member of the Family Innocence Project. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm delighted to be here.
So for our listeners, I left off at a point where the two of you came in, just like you did on the show, because first of all, it's my idea, and then I talked with Benedictus, and then we started to have meetings, first started at my home religiously on the first of the month. And Kimberly Hanlon walked into my house one day, and that's how I met the beautiful Kimberly Hanlon. But actually, you can explain, we met before that at a Minnesota State Bar Association event. And by bar event, we don't mean the bar down the street.
Yes, we met at a social function for lawyers and judges, and we got to talking at that function about our experiences in family court. I had done a good amount of family law litigation, as I know you had too. At that point, you being an attorney for 25 years, and me a bit less. But nonetheless, we shared a common observation about the court system, and that being that when families go through the adversarial court system, what might seem like a win for one person in that family was not a win for the family itself. That oftentimes, even when one person won, the whole family lost when they went to court.
Exactly. And you were a divorce lawyer until you decided to eliminate family court in your own law practice.
That's correct. I found that I was continually frustrated by the system, and that families really weren't being served by the system. And unlike you had this wonderful, brilliant idea, let's do something different, let's do something better. I didn't have that inspiration. What I said was, let me get out of being part of this cycle.
Yeah, so you came to, before you met me, at that bar event, and since then we've had other bar events, but before you met me at that bar event, you just said, I'm getting out of this. I don't want to be a lawyer doing this to families anymore. Is that it?
That's it. Well, of course, I still wanted to continue being a lawyer.
Yeah, and you have
I love my
estate
law
planning,
practice.
wills, law practice.
I love my law practice, and I actually love being a lawyer. What I didn't like was the net effect on families. And sometimes I noticed that after families had gone through the process, sometimes they were able to repair those relationships, but sometimes they weren't. And it wasn't always that the people coming to me had such devastation in their relationships before they went through the court process. Certainly they were in transition, and certainly they were in crisis, and there was something that needed to be done for these families. But the nature of the adversarial court system, which is completely appropriate in, say, civil litigation cases
Right.
and things like that, doesn't really fit for families. When families walk away, they want their relationship to be altered, obviously, from what they have now. But in the end, they still want to have workable solutions. And oftentimes, people still care deeply about each other, and to have to go through a court process that makes them adversaries doesn't honor that and doesn't really make room for that. And so the system either sets people up to become
Exactly.
combatants, or people have to go through the process and be very intentional about trying not to create the lifelong damage that happens to relationships in the long run.
Relationships including the children.
Not just including the children, but especially impacting the children. Really, it's the impact on the children that is so devastating.
And at this point, mediation was in existence for years. I mean, right? When you and I met, there was mediation.
Sure. And at the time that we met, mediation even was one of the processes that the court wants people to go through on the way to litigation. Now, unfortunately, because at the time that people often go to mediation within the court process, already people have gotten sort of entrenched into positions, and they've already decided sort of like these are our lines that we're not going to cross this line, and they've sort of set up their battle positions. And in court, they want to send people to mediation as, okay, well, let's make this last-ditch effort before we get, as people think, before we get to go to trial. Well, at that point, people have already moved past the space of being cooperative, and they've already gotten into the mindset of, well, let me make sure that I can hold my position and win at all costs.
And I want to remind our listeners that a family court litigation, it is a lawsuit. I mean, you have to serve a summons and a petition, personally serve, file it with the court. In Benedictus's case, that was never done. And that is the biggest reason it got, the judge removed himself and it got dismissed and all the orders up to that point were vacated. What is different about the Family Innocence Project, or you can explain, about that whole piece of submitting your case and your family to court jurisdiction?
So one of the very salient differences that I see is the context in which the Family Innocence Project operates. First of all, people come to the project and choose to resolve their differences from the start through the project. And the entire project is cooperative. So mediation for us in the Family Innocence Project isn't a last-ditch effort before going to court. And the context of cooperation is something that families get to adopt at the beginning and carry on throughout their conflict until it's resolved. The court doesn't necessarily have to have jurisdiction over deciding every little thing that a family needs or does. So, for instance, you have two completely fit parents, and up until the moment that they choose to dissolve their relationship, well, I shouldn't say their relationship, dissolve their marriage, because they're going to have a lifelong relationship.
Right.
Until the point that they choose to dissolve their marriage, they can decide easily who's picking the kids up when, and and who's doing what, and how they're going to split their time.
So they have in Family Innocence, they've been operating in it, because when they got their marriage certificate or got the birth certificate after giving birth for their children, they just naturally did all this stuff. They didn't have to have a particular plan outlined in a court-ordered structure.
Yes, people can choose for themselves what works for them. And so those issues don't necessarily have to be submitted to the court for decision-making. And that is primarily the difference between family innocence and the adversarial court system.
And that's where the Family Innocence Project comes in. And Anita Motolinia, maybe you can explain, Anita, the participation agreement. My thoughts are that people who are operating in family innocence, pretty much it's a pledge not to sue each other, to only go to court for the things that the court needs to do, like a termination of the marriage relationship, that we're going to have an agreement, we're going to agree, just like when we got married, we got our marriage certificate. We didn't have to agree to when we were going to, what kind of jobs we were going to have, when we were going to have our first baby, when we were going to have our first house. It just happened. So, Anita, maybe you can explain the participation agreement and, if we have time, some of the cases that you've worked on.
Sure. Well, I think you did an excellent job of summarizing, because it is that simple. And to add to what Kimberly said, The idea is self-determination. We believe that families can figure these decisions out for themselves, and they don't need court guidelines to tell them